I assume that's a backdrop.
This is a tapestry from Santa Cruz, California.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I just really liked it, so I just put it up in my little studio den area. So.
All right, folks, we're up and live on Facebook. So we'll wait a couple of minutes to see people log on before we get this thing started. Okay, and then I will silence.
Tommy, is that where you practice?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just like a little, it's a one bedroom with like a den. So I just have the den area is where I keep my cello and, you know, my practice areas.
Cool. Tommy probably has seen, Tommy, well, Karen, when we had that get together at your house, was that last, it wasn't last spring, so it must have been the spring before at this point. But were you there, Tommy, for that?
Yeah, that was technically it was my 10-year party.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Sorry?
Karen's practice room downstairs. It used to be a recording studio, right?
Yeah,
I know, it was amazing. That place is amazing.
It's pretty cool. I guess we'll have to wait for COVID.
You have a pretty good setup too, Danny.
Well, it's just a dedicated room, but it's not soundproof, and I mean yours.
You know what? Actually, I found it's not actually soundproof, so it's sound deadened. So it's for actually recording purposes. So yeah, so it's not actually soundproof. I found that out, but I guess for recording, you don't want, of course, the sound to bounce all over.
Right.
So
cheers,
I just got my Moscow Mule. I asked for a Moscow Mule.
All right. I think on that note, we should get this started. We have a bunch of people who are logging in and watching us right now. So hello, 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 Facebook land, and welcome to Backstage Banter. My name is Emily Briebach. I play English 1 with the ASO, and I will be your host and moderator today. We have joining me members of our cello section. We have Rainer Eudikis, Danny Laufer, Karen Freer, and Tommy Carpenter. If you have any questions that you'd like the cellist to answer, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll be watching them and throwing questions to the cellist as they come in. We have Casey Commander, who's already in the comments section saying hi, and Laura Nigerian also is watching and says hello. It's good to see you.
My neighbor.
Literally, your next door neighbor. Great. Okay, so let's get started with talking a little bit about how this season has been going. We've been, what is this, 4 months in, doing this recording of a concert and then having it streamed on the internet, as opposed to having any audience in the hall. Plus, there's all sorts of COVID restrictions we have, and it's been a very different season. Rainer, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about what it's been like to be back at work and to be playing with the different restrictions that we have right now.
Well, I mean, obviously it's great to be back and playing it all. My first sort of real service was just a small string sextet, just like a dry run of what our safety procedures were like and everything. And just being on stage, I actually took a photo of the hall because it had been so long since we had been in there that it felt so surreal just to even be on the stage. And I think, I mean, considering the circumstances, yeah, it's even though it might be a little bit different than what we're used to, I think everybody's thrilled to be there. It's unusual with not having a stand partner, like usually Danny's right next to me. I mean, we could like reach out to each other like that and share a stand. And now it's like, usually he's behind me, or if he's not there, Karen's there. And it's the way we have to listen to each other is a bit different. But it's, we're a really adaptable group. And I think like this past week compared to even our first week as a sort of full orchestra, I mean, I think we've gotten used to it pretty quickly, as much as we can. Yeah,
Danny, can you talk a little bit about what it's like with the specific restrictions, like being one on a stand and being farther apart? Like Rainer was saying, you two aren't sharing a stand right now.
Yeah, well, one of the things that both of us have started now to do because of page turns really initially, and then it's, I mean, I prefer usually having paper on the stand versus an iPad, but both of us are using iPads now with foot pedals because if we all turn at the same time, especially in a place that's really inconvenient, you could literally use the loose, half the section or more, depending. So, I mean, we have that. Obviously, we're playing with masks. The whole concept of sound is very different, although I think now, being a few months into it, I think all of us on stage have learned to listen better and kind of get used to the sound. Quite frankly, be really interesting when we are able to sit back together because we're using our ears more than I think we would need to in a sense because things are coming from so much further and it sounds different. But it'll be interesting to see when we get back to normal what that will feel like. But I think the biggest difference that I miss is being able to feel like there is a section sound. I mean, you try to blend, but it's hard when you're sitting 6 or so feet. Sometimes we sit in what I call a diamond formation. The Rainer is in front, and then we have the next two cellists, on either side, 6 feet back at an angle. And then if you have a fourth, it's usually the back of the diamond. And that can be really hard, especially for the person who's sitting in the very back, because you feel more disconnected than ever, I would think. I'm sure Tommy would be able to talk about that too. And so, but like Rainer said, I think we're fortunate to be able to work and make music. Not everybody is fortunate to do that. And
absolutely.
I think that also means, we hope to get back to normal more quickly as well.
Yeah. Casey Commander, who works in management for the Atlanta Symphony, she said we should get iPads for the whole orchestra. I'm behind that, Casey. If you want to make that happen, we are here for it. Tommy, do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like? So the other three people on this call tend to be at the front of the section, and you, not being a title chair player, are farther back. How has that been for you?
It's been a little bit of a challenge, just with the logistics and everything, like being 6 feet away, but also technically doubling that in terms of like how far you sit from the front player. Like with Rainer, it's more of when you're sitting in a section in like normal circumstances, you're pretty close to where you could hear him a little bit, but also see him really well. But now it's sort of, you have to kind of rely mostly on visuals. But also, I mean, for me, just to piggyback on Rainer and Danny's comments, it's just the complications that come with that are pretty much wiped away by the fact that I'm just thankful to be able to play it.
Yeah.
And that, every time I go back there, because we can only have a certain amount of people on stage at a time. So then, personnel and working out who's going to play what piece and everything like that is obviously, you're not going to be playing as much as what you were before. So like whenever I get that opportunity to do that, it's amazing. And, but yeah, it's mostly, like with Danny, what he was saying about the diamond formation, that actually, I think it was originated because we were playing Beethoven Violin Concerto. It was Rainer, me, and Danny, and we were as a section, we were 1, 2, 3, all in a straight line or a straight-ish line, and we were just, even if we just had to be able to hear each other somewhat. So we had to find a way. So Danny went a little bit to the left. I moved up a little bit front. But then the complications with that is that if I move up a little bit then I'm going into the bass territory. And then that's obviously the 6 feet rule. It's hard to try to. So it's like when you move one person, you have to figure out a way to adjust for the other 80 people or not 8.
Well,
not
30.
30 now, yeah. sorry. But like, you just have to adjust. But all of the complications, obviously, is just, I don't care about that. It's mostly just, I'm just happy to do something live with my friends and colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that has happened since that everyone keeps alluding to, so maybe some people haven't seen our concerts online, is that there's a limited number of people that we can have on stage at any one time per COVID guidelines. And I think that number right now is 35, which with everybody spaced out and this and that, the other thing. And what that means is that we're all playing in smaller sections than what we're used to. Karen, can you talk a little bit about what it's been like to play in a smaller cello section? I mean, I think I've only ever seen maybe even 3 or 4 at the max cellos on stage at one time. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Because I think there are 2 things going on, as we know in the cello section. One is like there are fewer of us on stage at one time. So we see each other like less. So usually, we see each other every single rehearsal and concert, and we're almost always all playing. I mean, every once in a while somebody's off, but by far most of the time we're all there for every single piece. So this is completely different where you're playing various pieces on a program. Maybe you're playing one of them, maybe you're playing all of them, but there might be, maybe if you're playing all of them, there'll be totally different personnel on them. And so it's really very, very different. I feel like we adapt though well as a section. And I feel like I'm fortunate. I'm always feel like I'm sitting in a good position where I can always see Rainer, and like if Danny's playing, I can see both of them. And so I don't feel like I feel like I can play and play with them and play with the orchestra. I feel like that's hasn't been a problem, but it's just a very different experience as far as like, just the personnel and the fewer people. And also with us, there's also just fewer people because we have some people retiring, and I don't know if we even had a full section before, but there's just, so it's interesting what's happening now. But I enjoy some elements of this setup though. I enjoy all being able to hear myself better. Sometimes that's a good thing to know also how you're fitting in, not just hearing other people, but knowing how you're sounding. Sometimes in a group that can be a challenge. So and I enjoy the recording aspect. We haven't talked about that, but I enjoy having to be really on in the recording and kind of the added pressure of that.
You're an adrenaline junkie.
I feel like kind of stimulating to like, just be on top of your game. And I have to say, I like that aspect. It's too bad there's not an audience. Maybe that can be added. Maybe we'll come up with some hybrid of this.
Yeah. Yeah, the recording aspect of it has also been really interesting. Rainer, I wanted to talk a little to you about what it was like to record a concerto, because you played the Haydn concerto a month ago, 2 months ago with us, back in October, I think. So what was it like for you to prep and play the concerto, and how is it different doing it in a recording setting as opposed to doing it in a concert setting?
So it felt really different. And my preparation, at least the mental aspect, had to be sort of targeted in a different way. So for anyone watching who maybe doesn't fully grasp what a typical week would be like, if we were doing the Haydn or another concerto, I would typically have at least 2 rehearsals with the orchestra during the week, and then you have 2, 3 or so concerts in the weekend. And in this case, we had 2 90-minute sessions to rehearse and record the whole thing. So you only really get, actually technically we only got 2 chances at everything. You would rehearse a bit, do one full take of one of the 3 movements, and then you could maybe try to fix a few things, but then for the recording you get one more take and then you leave it. We have no choice. So it's a little bit, it felt a little bit more sort of risky is not quite the right word. I don't know. It just it has to count. Everything you do, it's like, this is for real, you know? So as far as preparation, I think when we practice and we're preparing for something specific, whether it's like a solo performance or an audition, we visualize, we try to put ourselves in that position we're going to be in, because it's so hard to prepare for that feeling with the nerves and the pressure. So for that, I tried to really imagine, like, what if I had to play this spot and I don't get another chance? Like, what is that gonna be like? Because it's different for a normal performance. Even though you only get one chance in a performance, like, it's live, there's an audience, and unless there's a video, I mean, it kind of just disappears into the ether, you know? That's kind of, it's one nice thing about what we do, is that, you know, unless there's an archival recording, like, the evidence, you leave an impression on people, and all of the nitty-gritty details tend to just kind of evaporate. But with this, it's a video where, in theory, if someone wanted to really scrutinize, they could watch and be like, oh wait, did he make a mistake? And then back up.
Yeah, let me rewind that. And like,
watch it one more time. So yeah, it was a very different kind of feeling. And you know, you're dressed up and you're performing, and there are cameramen everywhere, and you're facing out to an empty hall. It was weird, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience.
Raina left a very good impression.
Yes. Yes. It sounded incredible, but you're right. It is under very different and weird circumstances, and especially for your first concerto with the ASO. Like, that's quite the feat to be able to get through all of that without.
Danny and Karen, you were both playing, right? Yeah, that's the thing that I was really sad, because I wasn't able to actually be on stage or hear him in the hall. It was a beautiful performance over when, you know, listening to it on online and everything. But that's I really, you know, it's too bad.
Yeah, it was great, because we haven't done it. I don't even know the last time the orchestra's played the concerto at all. I don't know if you know, Danny.
We actually talked about the walking out, like, when was the last time? Because it's been I don't remember. I really don't.
We usually get Dvorak and Elgar and Rococo variations, and not
Schumann, some Shostakovich. But it's such a beautiful concerto when played well, as it was. So, no, I mean, Rainer, I think if I remember correctly, between rehearsing and recording, he did at least 3 times playing through movement, and they were all really good. So that's tiring, and that is a lot of pressure. But he didn't show it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you felt any pressure, Rainer, you certainly hit it well.
Yeah, you hit it behind your mask.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of the mask, I had to practice for the few days before. I was practicing with the mask on.
That's smart. Yeah.
And I played on Zoom. I played for a former teacher, and I had my mask on. He's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you wore your mask, you know, to be safe for this." And I had to explain that, you know, if you're basically asphyxiating yourself while you're also having to play all this, it's like, you know, it's something you have to really get used to. So
yeah, we have a comment on Facebook from Brienne Turgeon, who's a member of our chorus. We miss our chorus. She said the concerto was stunning. Our principal cellist is, and then like that face emoji. The Mozart was so good, and the Haydn is delightful. I had to rewind and re-listen to several sections. So we do have people rewinding. That's fantastic. So I actually have a question about about playing with a mask on. Do you guys have issues with your peripheral vision, having a mask on? Like, do you have issues seeing what you're doing?
Not really. It's not too much of a. I mean, it all depends on like the material of the mask too. It's sort of like that's a little. Some are more difficult to breathe out of, and especially if we're not running the AC or something like that in the hall or whatnot. It's kind of difficult to breathe sometimes, but it's not too much of a big deal. No.
Yeah, and we have ASO issued face masks, which I actually, because I'm, you know, obviously I'm a wind player and I can't play with a mask on. I haven't had to use it yet, but hopefully everyone's able to see. I saw a harp player who, not Elizabeth, not our harp player, but another harp player I know, was asking about masks with like lower clearance, because she was having a hard time seeing her hands out of her peripheral vision. That's why I asked that. But
I guess
Awesome.
Well,
I think for us, I mean, basically we're looking at the music or looking at the conductor or trying, just to peripheral vision see the orchestra. That's not a problem. For me though, I've started to not wear my glasses. Maybe some people noticed for the recordings because I can see the music well enough without them, and the fogging up is can be really a problem. So that's been my issue, but it's fine. I can see well enough that don't
Yeah.
actually need them. But for me, like it's always been like sitting. If the audience is there and I don't wear my glasses, then I can't really see individual people very well. But
There's been a few guys who well, maybe it was just one particular guy who remained nameless, and he kind of has some tape and something like that to like get not the fumes to get up into his his glasses. So, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Right.
Really. Yeah.
I remember the first week that Gil Shahan played with us, and I don't think he had played yet with a mask, and he was using a mask that he was clearly not comfortable with. And it kept, I mean, I really was wondering if he was not going to see his fingerboard because it seemed like past his nose, So I would think it's, for string players, more of an issue for sure for violists and violinists. For us, it's more of a fogging situation.
Sure.
Although it does feel, I don't know, when you play with something that you usually don't play, it feels different. And even though it shouldn't have anything to do, with hearing, it's just like we're so sensitive to the smallest things which are different when we play, that to play with the muzzle basically on is kind of weird. So, but no, we do what we need to do. So
Yeah, of course. Okay, so let's move on to a less COVID-y topic. So do you guys have any any favorite memories from concerts, either ASO concerts or recordings that we've done in the past? Do you have any favorite concerts that you remember? I remember one of my favorite memories is the first time I played at Carnegie Hall with the ASO. We did the Britain War Requiem, and I can't remember, I think I may have told this story before. I can't remember the soprano's name, but during the sound check, she was just like bawling, like she was just singing and just like tears were streaming down her face. Everything was working well in the orchestra, like the hall was beautiful, just everything was perfect. That's one of my favorite ASO memories. Do you guys have any? Danny, let's start with you.
I don't think I can single out like one particular, but I mean, there've been some great experiences, certainly Carnegie Hall. The majority of the performances that we have done at Carnegie has been with chorus. We did play, I think it was Rach 2 with Georg Olsen, which was pretty special. I think that was after we had recorded with him as well. And but when I first came to the ASO, within 2 months, we went on our, since then, our last European tour. But as far as the chunk of time of really being in awe of this ensemble, first joining it, all the great halls that we played in and the rep and how the orchestra was received, that was certainly a great memory with this orchestra a number of years back. But I love how over the years we've, I love the romantic pieces, and I love Mahler. I love Mahler because it's just such an incredible musical journey. Almost every single piece is just like, and in the right hands, it is an experience that you walk off stage and go, wow, So, I mean, there've been great soloists. It's really hard to pinpoint, for me at least. I do. I was lucky enough still to play the Messiah with Shaw. In fact, his last Messiah, I don't think he finished conducting, if I remember correctly. I think Norman had to because he wasn't feeling well, or he finished one of the concerts. I'm not sure which way it was, but I do, as far as Shaw's concerned, there was a very angelic face when he would conduct all these. There are certain choral pieces that we still do that I can see Shaw, and I didn't have that much time with him even as a you know, with him being emeritus and all that. But I mean, every conductor from Yoel to Robert to Donald have had incredible special concerts, and I feel very lucky to have been part of a few of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen, how about you? Or maybe even another way to take this question is, are there pieces that you really enjoy specifically playing with the ASO, or do you have specific memories of?
Oh yeah, I mean there always are, and it's just like, I mean, there's so many weeks, we have so much great repertoire that it's hard to choose, really, you know. I mean, sometimes it might be just an incredible Beethoven eroica, just feels just amazing, or you know, maybe a Stravinsky, amazing, one of the big Stravinsky pieces. We've done Firebird a lot. That's always exciting, or like Rite of Spring, or like Debussy La Mer. For me, there's certain pieces that just never feel like they get old. However many times you do them, they're just so great that it never feels like, oh, this again. So there's just a lot of them. But I mean, and different conductors bring different things to them, and we get so many great soloists, some new ones, some returning ones, and it's really a treat to hear them. And also for me, I feel lucky a lot of times, because I don't know how it is sitting in for other people, but a lot of times I feel like I'm on the outside. I really have a great view of the soloist. A lot of times I could just see them. Sometimes I can even see the pianist, but you know, if the piano's just right, but then you don't want to like stare at them.
Yeah, you have a much different perspective than I do from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it feels like, oh wow, I have a real front row. I'm closer than the audience to this soloist. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, but then also what Danny said about Shaw, for me, my story is, when I first started here, that was his very end of his life, sadly. But I met him once when he did the Christmas with ASO, and that was really memorable, the way he put his heart into that. I'm really glad I had the chance to do that concert with him once, and since he put it together, and his readings, and yeah, and also he was just very gracious. Like he's like, oh, who are you? And you know, he wanted to know something about me, and it was really nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know it's very weird. I think this weekend would have been like the normal Christmas with the ASO weekend. I think it's usually the first week after Thanksgiving. And it's very weird to not be playing it, you know. Tommy, how about you? Do you have any favorite memories from ASO concerts, or pieces that you love playing specifically with this group?
Well, a lot of what I've been doing, I mean, I think it's my fourth season, so it's a lot of pieces that I remember are pieces that I played for the first time, and being able to actually do that with this incredible orchestra is really memorable. And like I played my first Beethoven 9, I think it was last year or the year before.
Wow.
And then Britain War Requiem, Verdi Requiem, like all these pieces that I wasn't able to do when I was a student. And also I really appreciate and enjoy the opportunity when we do opera. When we do semi-staged operas, like Otello was really fun. And actually, it was in between when I got the job here and then when I started that, I got asked to sub in the Gluck Orfeo, which was also really memorable for me. So yeah, I mean, a lot of romantic stuff I love. A lot of tone poems, Strauss tone poems. I'm a sucker for those. And we would have done a lot of Mahler this year, which I'm really bummed about. But yeah, it's, you know, hopefully soon. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Rainer, I know this is your second season, is that right?
Yeah.
So how about you? Do you have, I know it's been a short time that you've been here, but do you have any favorite memories from ASO concerts?
You know,
or favorite pieces?
The piece that came to mind when you first asked the question was actually my trial week here. and it was the meat and potatoes of that program was the Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. And I thought that was really appropriate because, I mean, yes, it was a trial period for me to get the job, but also, you know, it was a way for me to get to know this orchestra and sort of know what it is that I'm hypothetically going to be joining and being a part of, hypothetical at that point. And for those who don't know the piece, you might guess from the title, Concerto for Orchestra, it's a real showpiece for the orchestra. And I just remember it became really apparent. It's like the strings are so solid, the winds are like such beautiful players all throughout, and it's just such a well-rounded, well put together, just professional in all ways ensemble. And that just became clear to me at that point, because I was basically just basing everything off of reputation alone, which was obviously great, and that's why I came to the audition. But to actually perform with the ensemble in a piece like that gave me some really great context and gave me a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So another question that we've gotten in the past that I really like is, we all have favorite composers and we all have favorite pieces, but what composer do you think wrote the best for the cello? Do you, or even conversely, what composer do you think didn't know what the heck they were doing when they wrote for the cello? See lots of faces. Tommy, you laughed. What do you have?
I think I would just say that I think Beethoven didn't really know what he was doing when he was writing for the cello, but it's awesome, so we're willing to do it.
Right. Well, of course, that's we take the challenge, right? That's what we do. But what about Beethoven's writing is awkward on the cello?
I don't know how to describe it, but Beethoven's just never easy. It's just surprisingly difficult. I just take a famous audition excerpt, Beethoven 5. I mean, that's just always like, I don't know why it just doesn't lie well. The key is difficult. I just like a lot of I feel like he was always trying for something, some great musical idea, but it didn't always translate technically. It's certainly not to be easy.
Hours and hours and hours and hours of spent on that excerpt.
But also, I think with Beethoven, especially the soul, like sonata stuff and like Beethoven triple, like there's all this stuff. Well, for example, I just did this Beethoven duo with Genway, our principal violist, and there are parts where, I mean, I'm playing in the same, like higher than he would ever go on his instrument, and it's just, and I mean, pitch and just like physically, proportionally, like I'm way up there, and it's like, what was he thinking doing that? It's just, I mean, there are theories that the interpretation of the treble clef sometimes, maybe we're being a little too literal, and it would have been understood at the time that you would play it an octave lower, but no one does.
Really?
You have to like, you're not really like, you're not a real cellist if you don't play it. You just have to bite the bullet. And I mean, in the Beethoven triple, there's just some like really kind of like reckless high stuff that you just have to do it, but it really doesn't sit well. The intervals don't sit well on the instrument. But yeah, like Karen said, it's great music for the most part, so we suck it up and we do it. But
there's a lot of that in Brahms as well, and it's just very awkward. But it's just for the cello and being such a lyrical lower register. I mean, but versatile. But it's also very awkward as well. But it just fits really well for the range. So
I think we all love the melodies whenever we can get it, because who doesn't like to play a beautiful phrase? And it's kind of funny when many times when you see a spresivo, people go, "Oh, we can play," and then sometimes we go, we see the hand like it's too much. It's just a spresivo. But I mean, it's so great the fiddles many times obviously have, in the strings, a lot of the melodies, it goes around in the orchestra, depending on the composer, we have more or less, but I mean, who doesn't want to play the melody, but sometimes it's also really great with great writing, to be the supportive, line as well. If it's through color or whatever it might be, but yeah.
We have Andrew Brady, our principal bassoonist, in the comments section says, as a bassoonist, for me, Beethoven is one of the hardest composers to make sound good. I think all of you bass clef folk bonding over.
Richard Strauss too. It's like such incredible music, but I just sometimes think about what people must have thought at the time, like, what, how are we supposed to play this?
But in some ways that's easier, don't you think? To me, Strauss, even though it might be technically more consistently challenging, it tends to lie better sometimes in how the end product sounds than sometimes some of the Beethovens. So of course, it all depends also though how, you know, whoever is in charge is interpreting the phrasing, the timing, the sounds. I mean, it can make a huge difference in how we feel about the piece.
Sure. Do you guys have any composers come to mind that wrote really well for the cello? I know you said Strauss, Danny, but are there other like I don't know, like what other composers where you sit down, you're like, okay, this feels right. This feels natural.
I love I think Mahler is great. Mozart, actually, I love how Mozart writes. There are many pieces and with many composers. It depends. I wouldn't just put, you know, one particular composer in a certain box. I mean, they're going to vary, but I don't know what the others think.
Maybe more of a case of what's fun to play, you know.
Sure, yeah, fun is definitely a what's fun to play for you, Karen?
Oh wow, like something like, I don't know, I suppose this one's fun for everybody, like Symphony Fantastique. You know, it's just something that has a lot of color and variation, and yeah, and I feel like that one is somehow, when you learn it, it's not as hard as it seems. Like, for instance, so yeah, of course Mahler. I mean, that's, everybody says that, but it's true, because there's just so much there's just so many different moods and colors, as it were.
It's funny because from my perspective, he just didn't write a lot of English horn. So most of what I do in Mahler symphonies is count rests. I mean, I enjoy hearing all of it around me, and I enjoy when I can join in. But for the most part, I don't get to play very much during a Mahler symphony. Rainer, how about you? What composers do you?
It's sort of going to be a broken record, but I mean, the Strauss, the Mahler. Like I think Tommy said, like being a sucker for Strauss tone poems, like that's totally me. Like that big climactic resolution in Ein Heldenleben, for anyone watching who knows, da da dee da da da, you know, that spot. I get goosebumps just thinking about that spot, you know, and I think that's one of those pieces when people list stuff that they get tired of playing. I mean, I haven't been playing for, you know, 30 years or anything like that yet, but I don't imagine that I'll get tired of moments like that.
Yeah, we did that last season, right? We did Heldenleben last season.
But the fact that big final resolution, and everyone in this chat was like, oh yeah, they knew exactly what I was talking about. Like, we all feel that same. There are certain moments that are kind of universally loved. So yeah.
That's fantastic. So another question that I've seen in some of these before is, and this is going to be interesting, is what instrument is your favorite instrument that's not the cello? Because almost everybody, when they're asked what their favorite instrument is, it's not their own, they all say the cello. So what do cellists think? Whether it's an instrument, like, I don't know if you played another instrument or one that you just really like hearing.
You know what, actually, the instrument that I would have chosen if I didn't play the cello, because I had to, when I was switching from my 4th grade to my 5th grade year, in my 5th grade, I had to choose an instrument to play when I was 10. And it was like, I chose the cello, but if it wasn't that, it would be clarinet.
Clarinet?
Yeah. Interesting. Because I play the recorder. So it's like the same thing, kind of, right?
Basically the same thing.
Generally, no. But yeah, probably clarinet.
Nice. Rainer, how about you?
Well, I almost said clarinet because my mom is a professional clarinetist. So
no kidding.
I've really been like steeped in clarinet playing like my whole life. But also because I've been steeped in clarinet playing my whole life, I did not say clarinet. I think my public answer is going to be, I have an appreciation for any instrument that's played really beautifully and played. Really well.
That's very diplomatic of you.
No.
In any in any given week, if I hear something like with just really like a really beautifully played phrase or really just something that really stands out, then, you know, I temporarily give my loyalty to whoever it is that did that until someone else does something similar. So that's my official answer.
All right, all right. Danny, how about you?
Well, I would have two answers. One is, even though I don't envy pianists because they always have a different, you know, instrument if they go from place to place, but there's so many great pieces written just for the piano that, I mean, how nice not to need, you know, any accompaniment. I think that's really neat just in concept. I also really, really love the sound of the G string on the violin, the darkness, and I'm jealous of that sound. I mean, because it's just such a beautiful timbre, and but I don't know how they play the instrument compared to it's just. I
So
remember in
tiny.
grade school once they had like, you know, you could try different instruments, and I picked up a violin just and I wasn't playing the cello at the time, but I was like, how do you get anything out of this? Because it's so compact, right? And I mean, it's a whole different approach. Just as I'm quite frankly in awe of bass players, how much energy they have to put into that instrument compared to us, which is already so different from violins and violas. I mean, it takes, you know, obviously, you know, special skills for all of our instruments. Huh?
What'd you say, Karen?
I said, come on, they have fewer notes.
But my dad would say, but it's the quality, not the quantity.
Karen, how about you?
Well, I can't remember if you said orchestral instrument or not, but I actually did grow up. My first instrument was the piano, and I still play from now and again. And I always think I want to put more time into it. From every once in a while, I could kind of get really into it, and then like I get busy. But I have the piano that my parents bought when I was 10 years old. So I was lucky enough to have that shipped to me. And I love the big 9-foot pianos that we have on stage. Obviously I don't have one of those, but I love that, the grandness of it, the range. And I do love the violin. And I at one point thought about, when I was still quite young, probably barely starting the cello, thought about switching, but I didn't. But I think the repertoire, I'm jealous again, like as Danny said, I'm jealous of the repertoire. That's part of it. There's just so much you can. Yeah, I mean, I love the cello, but there's like, it feels like there's just so many more pieces that the violin has. So
yeah. We have a comment from Jessica Udan, who's in our viola section, and she said, "My 3-year-old has recently announced that he wants to play the cello."
Yes.
When did each of you start studying? Tommy, you said something about like 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah, I was 10 when I started. I mean, my father played guitar in a rock band for years, and I used to like sit on the steps on my basement like every night when I was a kid, just listening to his band practice. And so I was always interested in playing some kind of instrument. And it wasn't until I was going into my 5th grade year when I was 10 to, you know, think of starting record. I don't know if you would call recorder like a serious endeavor, but like I got so.
It seems to have made an impression on you.
No, I remember getting so into it that like for Christmas, one of my relatives, I can't remember who it was, sent me like a bass recorder from France or something. Like the made in France. I don't really know how, you know, where it is right now, but like, yeah, I had to. It was part of our school curriculum where we had to play an instrument, and it was only for a year, but I just kind of fell in love with it really immediately. And I even remember like a super nerdy thing, like going out in recess and on recess and playing like outside, and just fiddling around and trying to play stuff I heard on the radio. So it was just one of those fall in love kind of things really quickly, and I just try to I just took off with it as soon as I got my hands on it. So
Nice. Rainer, how about you? When did you start studying the cello?
I was 6 years old. I guess it was first grade, and yeah. So I mentioned my mom's a clarinetist. She grew up in like Texas public school music programs, and she had always wanted to be a string player, but I guess that wasn't an option at the time. It was all like marching band. It was all about marching band. But she wanted to be a string player, and it was just sort of like, I mean, she was good at making me think it was my idea. But I remember like being like, when am I going to start the cello? When am I going to start the cello? And yeah, I did Suzuki for I think just about a year, and then I ended up going another way. But yeah, that's when I started, and it's just been there. I've had a few little mini rebellions in my life where I tried to leave it, and it would not be left. Here I am. So.
Yeah. Danny, how about you? When did you start playing the cello?
I started basically around 10 when we came to the States. Although when we came from Germany at the time, I remember, and I have pictures of my dad had taken a violin and taken out the plug basically and put a makeshift M-pin in on the bottom, so I could like pretend, to play. But I mean, I was surrounded by music since I can remember, since my dad was a cellist and my teacher, except for 2 years. So yeah, so it certainly helps. It wasn't always easy though. I'll say that.
Right.
Talking about rebellion, I did not like to practice, as my mom will still attest to, but I survived.
You seem to have done okay, even if you didn't want to practice when you were 10.
Right.
I think most of us went through that phase when we were that age. Karen, how about you? When did you start playing the cello?
I can't exactly remember. So what I remember is that we tried piano lessons when I was 4, and I remember hating the teacher. So we tried again at 5, and then that stuck. I actually had a really wonderful teacher, and oddly enough, her husband was a cello teacher. So they're both professional musicians, really wonderful people. Still teaching in California, but so a piano teacher said, well, she has a good ear, she should study a string instrument. So that's when I had the decision put to me to study the violin or the cello. And I thought, oh, well, he's a cellist, that seems to make most sense. But I think I was maybe 8, I'm not exactly sure, something like that.
Nice, that's great. We had one question from Laura Nigerian. Let me scroll back and find it. She asked, true confessions, what technique or aspect of playing the cello do you feel you have to work the hardest on to master? Let's start with Tommy.
Oh no, I'll come back to it. I'm thinking.
Okay, sorry, Rainer.
I mean, does it have to be something that we actually do on a regular basis? Because there are all kinds of crazy things like like why is that funny? There's like flying up bow, down bow, spiccato kind of stuff that you only do if you're fancy and trying to show off. And it's where it's like you have to weigh how difficult it is and how much work goes into it versus what the actual payout is. Like, is it really worth it? There are things like that, like just technical, like flashy kind of things. And I've never been good at that particular bit with the bow. I usually avoid that. I think a lot of people do. I'm not going to speak for people in this call, but I mean, there are some things that just never get easier. I mean, like intonation is a lifelong struggle.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, it's just the nature of the instrument, especially. I mean, anything other than like a keyboard instrument where you don't have to think about it. It's the variables that go into playing in tune are just sort of always in flux, and we're flesh, not machines. So like we can't. It's you just practice to have that consistency, but you never actually achieve it. You get better and better. You practice and practice and practice, and then one day you put it in the case and you don't get it out anymore. And I guess you've won at that point. I don't know. That's not a very good answer, but I'll let someone else carry on.
Yeah, Danny, how about you?
Well, it's funny. Raina was actually talking about this, the Haydn week, about how much he's been practicing, and also octaves. And for octaves, especially if you do octaves with thumb, it's like you need to have a good callus. But in general, you don't necessarily spend, a regular week practicing a lot of octaves. It depends. You might have some octaves in the piece. Sometimes you can do it with thumb 3 or 1/4, depending what it is. Sometimes you're like, well, it would sound better if I had a better callus this week for, thumb 3, for example. But for me, it's like, if you've got a good callus going, and you've been working on octaves, great. But that's the thing for me that sometimes drives me nuts, because obviously you always want to, like Rian said, you want to play in tune. But you do need, I think you can play in some position, but octaves is a little bit different, at least to me. I tend to play further away from the nail, the string that I actually play the thumb. Even though I know many people are taught to play, where the nail is, and it never felt comfortable for my thumb. I felt I always had more power closer to the joint, shall we say. So I play closer to the knuckle. But anyway, to me, it's the callus thing, because you can get sore pretty quick if you're spending suddenly, 20 minutes, half an hour working just on octaves.
Yeah.
There's a
Karen,
funny
how about
story about the octaves, actually. There was a time where I was playing Rococo variations, and it was like the very ending variation. And I practiced it so many, because I was playing it for this for a performance the next day, and I remember practicing that so many times the night before that I actually actually put a cut into my finger. So like the next day I had to play all of those like on a cut finger, and it's just like, you need to be able to like work that up in callus and knowing which angle works for you and some stuff like that. So that's obviously a challenge.
Wow, was there a lot of blood on your finger?
Thankfully, no, but there's a new skin, a lot of new skin involved, like the topical stuff that you put on there. So.
Oh man. Karen, how about you? Do you have any technical things that you are tough for you to master even now?
I mean, basically everything, but you keep thinking, like, I always thought, oh, I'm going to get to the point where I just know it's going to be, I mean, obviously you have a certain level of, competence, but yeah, I think it's really true that you never feel like you totally master everything. I remember in when I went to Indiana University, there was this one cellist who played, talk about like down bow and up bow staccato. Like I still feel like I can never really manage that, and I can't really master it. Wish I could. And there was this one cellist I played, I think it was, to be really nerdy, I think it was like Duport number 7. I think, and in my memory, it was like, did the whole thing like two down bows and 2 up bows, and it was just like perfect. It's like, I don't even know how anyone does that. I still don't know.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things about being a musician, is that it's a never-ending endeavor, right? We're always trying to be better. We always think we can be better. We're always working at being better. It's one of the.
It's always just better to have the mindset of you're always a student of it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
There's the famous Casals quote when I think he was of pretty advanced age, and he was talking about how he still practiced every day, and someone asked him, like, Maestro, why do you still practice every day? And he said, because I think I'm getting better, or I'm something like that, and that is really that's the mindset you have to have, is that it's just like you just chip away at it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we are nearing the end of our time here, but I do want to ask my absolute favorite question, which is, do you have any funny or embarrassing stories of things that have happened to you on stage? We've had stories of people chasing after mutes on Carnegie Hall stage during a concert, people getting concert times wrong and running in on stage, mid-piece. All sorts of crazy things that have happened. Do you guys have any stories like that? Or another side to that is, do you have any crazy audition stories? Because I know I definitely have a bunch of those as well.
Well,
Danny?
I can share 2 quick ones. It was, I think, my either first or second year here, we used to do these champagne coffee concerts with Fred Scott. And for whatever reason, I thought the concert, I think, was at 1:00, but on Saturday, but it was at 11. Oh. And I happened to be sitting principal for that concert. Oh, no. And I got a call, I think around 11:00. and it was the former stagehand Russell, and he says, "Do you know you have a concert today?" I'm like, "Oh yes." He says, "Do you know what time it is?" And the concert, I said, "Yes, 1 o'clock." Then he took the phone while the orchestra was tuning. He says, "No, it's at 11." And I felt terrible for one. There's nothing I could do because it's a short concert for one, and until I get dressed and leave, the concert is going to be basically done. So that taught me to double check always my concert times. How to make more sense. And the other short one is so our former principal cellist Chris Rex. This was during Levy's time, and I think Karen might know the story. Maybe she was here, I'm not sure. So we were doing something like Debussy La Mer or La Valse, and we needed mutes. And for whatever reason, Chris had lost his tort mute that just sits on the string, on the G string or whatever string people want to use. And so he was using the heavy metal mute for anything that was muted. So, and when he didn't need it, he would keep it right next to his chair on the floor. And I actually had Donna Valak, our member of the section as well, in on this. I decided to play a prank on him, and I took some fishing line and I tied one end to the chair, the bottom of the chair. And he used to have also this string bag, a black bag with strings, just in case somebody broke a string, it would be there. So I kind of put that on top of the string. I mean, fishing line is clear, so you don't really see it unless you really look. And the other end, of course, I tied to the mute, but really short. And I think we did it during, I don't know if it was the beginning of rehearsal or after a break. But so we start, and I think the mutes weren't needed at first. And then when it's really quiet, you have to put the mutes on. And I was sitting with Chris, but anyway, that doesn't even matter. So when he reached for it, of course, it got stuck, right? And I mean, I have a hard time not laughing. I laugh very easily, as my colleagues know. But I just, I had such a hard time controlling myself. And I remember the real puzzlement on Chris's face, for one. Yoel Levy looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And it was very funny, at the time. I don't think probably Levy thought it was as funny as I did. But after that we got him. I think we got him a new mute. But that was fun. That was a good prank.
We have Marcy Gurno who just mentioned in the comments, "Danny, this is hilarious and it sounds so not like you."
You never know.
That's true. We got to watch out for you now. Karen, do you have any stories?
I'd say Raider has to watch out now. He's got to watch his mute.
Scares me.
I was going to say, if it's fair, since we brought up the former principal, to bring up his, luckily this hasn't actually happened to me, or if it did, I blocked it out. But no, but one time we used to go to pretty often to Athens. I mean, we still go to Athens, Georgia to play concerts, but we used to go, pretty often. And there was a Sunday concert, and we're like, where is he? Where is the principal? And he'd driven all the way to Athens. We just
And the concert was in Atlanta?
He just assumed, yeah, he'd driven all the way to a concert that didn't happen. And we just teased him about that for years.
That's the stuff of nightmares. I mean, we have all these runouts in various different places that and there's going to be at some point where I'm going to drive to Athens when we should have been in Kennesaw or something.
Yeah, I'm always afraid of that. I keep looking at the schedule. Is this really right? Is this really where I'm supposed to be?
Right. Yeah, the paranoia is real for sure. Rainer, do you have any stories?
My story, it's not a performance story, but it's pretty similar to Danny's first story. So I was very new to the Utah Symphony, which was my previous job. And that orchestra also does a lot of opera. They do, I think, 4 operas in the pit every year. And I was untenured. I had not been there very long. And the opera schedule is a little different from the symphony schedule. And my now wife and I are at home, and we've got a chicken in the oven roasting, and I'm wearing beat up old painting clothes, and I hadn't taken a shower that day. And it was oh, this is going to be such a great evening at home. How relaxing. And I get a call from our then personnel manager, where are you? and kind of like Danny, like I can hear like tuning and noodling in the background. And I mean, I don't think that's the closest I've come to just like actually like my heart being this far up in my throat. It was, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, you know, because I thought I wouldn't get tenure and I was brand new. And yeah, I think I threw on, it wasn't a concert, thankfully, but I threw on some more representable clothing and got there. But also because it's in the pit, you have to like climb over everybody and make your way to your chair. So there was no way to be stealthy about it. But I learned that same lesson where it's like, I check my schedule like 5 times.
Oh yeah.
Even this week when I don't have to work, I'm still going to find an email from personnel like confirming like I am not working this week for sure. It only takes once usually.
Right, for sure. Tommy, how about you?
I was going to say, sorry, I
Oh.
didn't mean to cut in, but I was going to say, yeah, even recently, as my colleagues know, I actually showed up for rehearsal. I wasn't called to play, which luckily it didn't happen the other way around.
That day was funny because I turned around and I was like, hi, Karen. And I turned around again and I think it was Brad. I was like, what happened to Karen? It's like literally like a minute later. It's like, wait a minute. I remember that.
That's funny. Tommy, do you have any stories?
I mean, a lot of traumatic experiences that have just been, actually, there was one where like I first got the job and I moved down here and then this is an Atlanta thing for people watching. This is just an Atlanta traffic thing. So I had like a service, like an outreach that I had to do at in a location where I plugged in all the address, but I put Atlanta afterwards, and then I didn't actually. So I showed up to this place, and it was a convenience store, and I'm like, well, I'm not coaching here. So then I realized it was Marietta instead of Atlanta. So then it took me like 45 minutes to get up to this place because of traffic, where normally it would take like 12. So I just remember having to battle the Atlanta traffic, and if anybody is listening here, knows how bad it is. But anyway, it was more just traumatic experiences rather than looking at it with, looking back with, fond memories, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Well, that's the last element of healing, is when you can look back and laugh at these
I guess so, yeah. Still working on it.
There is something just came to mind and I don't think anybody, well, actually, Karen obviously knew Jane Little.
I was here with Jane too.
Oh, you were? Okay, good. So in '91, when we were on tour in Europe, I don't remember all the specifics, but luggage would get picked up outside your door at a certain time to make sure that all the luggage is being transported either to the bus or to the plane. And Jane and her husband at the time, who was already retired, were traveling together. And I remember seeing Jane on the plane in a robe. And I think what had happened is she had packed all her clothes and had, I guess, packed everything except what she basically had that evening. So she showed up, with the rope on the plane, and that was a big conversation on that tour because, did you see Jade? Yeah. So there's some funny things that happen. Some things which probably one can't discuss on Facebook, but but they're fun. And we've had some good pranks actually in our section over the years. Rainer, be careful.
I mean,
Seriously.
I loved hearing that story with the mute. Like, I feel like a good cello section needs a bit of humor to like really function well. So we should reintroduce some of these hijinks, I think.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
watch what you asked for, Rainer.
No,
I was gonna say,
this.
I don't know, whoopee cushions, anybody? I don't know.
Yeah, remember those?
Apparently
devices with remote controls.
Apparently my predecessor was also quite the prankster. So
oh yeah,
we're a lot more fewer pranks in the oboe section than there used to be. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for spending your evening with me, and thank you to everyone who watched on Facebook. We will continue Backstage Banter through the end of this year and into next year. Please feel free to comment on this video and let us know who you'd like to see, what other sections you'd like to see on Backstage Banter. And until then, thanks everybody. It was good to see you and good to catch up.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.